What about like, have you ever had any instances where like you've dealt with somebody who had like a significant loss, whether it's financially or, actually let's speak financial. Let's say somebody like spent 5, 6, 7, 8 years building something and then it just goes bankrupt.
Yes.
And then they just lose their groove or their momentum or their desire to grow, and they're just sitting there like, well, this is depressing. Have you worked with people like that? And if you have, like, what sort of tips or what sort of things did you do to kind of get them to gain that momentum back again?
All right. I've never worked with anybody who was fresh off of a bankruptcy. Usually what I get, and I'm thinking of this guy now that I worked with, he ran a distribution company back in Tennessee. And at one point, I wasn't really even looking for this. It just kind of came up in conversation. Because I was asking him, I said, why is it so important that you keep trying to drive this business? And he said, because I've done this twice before and I failed both times. And he goes, this time, it's not just my money, it's my partner's money. So I have to figure out how to make this work. So he figured out how to bounce back, okay? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the loss is so severe, it causes people to either get out, kind of like investing, You make a bad investment, you lose your entire portfolio, people just leave the market.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just means somebody has to take some time off, reassess what they really want. Because what I find a lot too is people, and I know I'm probably going to get some blowback from this too, but people, a lot of times you'll hear people say things like follow your passion, right? Mm-hmm. Fairly common term.
Yeah, I think that's crap.
In the entrepreneurial world. And I tell people the same thing. I say, do not do that. Yeah. Because passion is nothing but emotional fuel. It's great to have behind a well thought out idea that you're really committed to. But passions can change. The same passion you started with is probably not going to be what you have later in life. Mm-hmm. Find your calling. Find that one thing that you naturally gravitate to, regardless of the situation you're in. And when you find that, that's what you follow. You bring passion in when you really need to get over the tough challenges, the humps, the things that take you from here to here. But passions they're emotionally based, so they're fleeting by nature. I love riding motorcycles. My wife and I do a lot of that for touring around the state and everything. I have no interest in owning a motorcycle dealer. It's limited.
Sure.
So yeah, I tell people a lot of times if the business you failed in wasn't the right business for you to start with, you've got to sit back and reevaluate that. Sometimes people get into things because monetarily it's lucrative, or they know someone else, somebody completely different from them that got into it and made way more money than they deserve to make. Maybe they didn't really have the academic background or the social skills or other things that people tend to hook towards being successful. Yet these people they're making a lot of money, they're living a great life, and you're sitting there saying, well, maybe I should do the same thing. And that's usually what happens. When you take somebody else's yardstick to measure your success, very rarely does it ever work.
So how do you reignite the fire in somebody if they don't have it anymore?
If somebody's lost that drive, then what I typically try to help them figure out is, what did you actually lose? Did you lose any family members? Did you lose your home? Did you have to file bankruptcy? You kind of go down these lists of these hellacious things that would kill somebody. Mm-hmm. And usually when you get to the bottom of it, you realize, okay, you tried something. Here's a great example. When I started coaching in 2008, I bought into a franchise. Very small startup franchise. It was a privately held firm that decided to change from being a privately held business model to a franchise model. And I just happened to be one of like 12 people that got in there on the ground floor. And I thought, okay, this is worth it. Okay. Great experience. 2.5 years later, they filed bankruptcy. And I'm thinking, holy crap, what am I going to do now? But at that point, I had probably dumped about $100,000 into this thing. And I'm thinking, everybody else is going back to the industry they came from when they first fell in love with coaching. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I don't have that industry to go back to. I said goodbye to that industry. And I decided I was going to pursue something that I genuinely thought I was good at. And I wasn't going to turn around and try to go back and reinvent myself in some old industry I came out of. And I ran into so many people that were just so heartbroken all they could do was go back to comfortable environment. That was their way of kind of getting over the hurt. And so about 30 days went by, and I'm sitting there thinking, what am I going to do? And my wife comes in one day. She goes, well, you're always telling me about clients who stay way beyond their contract because they like working with you. Why don't you just do your own thing? And I'm like, oh, my God, Eureka. Why didn't I think of that? Well, that's too much in my own head. So a lot of times you don't think of the obvious when you're too busy having your own private pity party. And so I took about 30 days, rebuilt it out, and it took me another 3 years to kind of establish myself. Best thing that ever happened. Best thing. I could not be here where I am today if I hadn't gone through that bankruptcy of the franchise company that I had bought my franchise from.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that when we originally kind of chatted.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting because like it's like that little downfall is what made your whole career.
Absolutely. I mean, I learned things from those guys, including a lot of what not to do, which is always helpful. You know, you don't want to keep repeating the same bad behavior or anything else like that. And that's what got me here. And so I'm even though, you know, you can always go back and say, gee, what could I have done with all that money if I didn't lose it? Well, that was my investment. That was my MBA.
Yeah, I always think about like, because I dropped out of college. So I always think about my ups and downs in my career as like my college tuition.
Well, I mean, if you think of all the famous people today that are, I mean, way beyond the top of their game that never finished school. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a long list of them. So you're in good company.
I never liked it. I was never interested in it, you know?
Absolutely.
I think it's funny because my wife was telling me this yesterday. She's like, I've noticed, Adam, you only study things that you can apply immediately. You're never interested in conversations that don't. Like, remember yesterday we were talking about the honey stuff? Uh-huh. She was asking you all these questions left and right. When we left, she was like, you really don't care, huh? And I'm like, no, I do care. But what kind of life-changing material is that going to give me if I learn more about like what this honey does over this one, you know? So
that's good party trivia.
Yeah,
you run into somebody, you can, you know, if you see an opportunity to throw that in there.
Oh, she's great with that.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
Oh, you know, it's funny. You know what that connects really well to? It's like, dude, so the guy who has a college degree, right? All the stuff that he learned few far in between, like the important stuff, it's like you mentioned earlier, it's for the purpose of him just telling other people, hey, this is what I know, in order to get like, you know, praise from it.
Right. Get accolades or be looked at as having a certain level of value because you have a lot of academia behind you.
Yeah.
And the sad part about that today is not only are a lot of kids coming out of school with hellacious amounts of debt that they have to repay, but the stats on what I'm going to tell you here haven't really changed much in about the last 40 years. Over 80% of people that graduate from college with a specific degree don't end up following that degree once they get established in their career.
Yeah. I've had that happen so many times because we're in the cybersecurity business, and a lot of the engineers we hire, you'd be like, one has like a sociology degree, one has like, I'm like, what the heck?
Right.
And then they just ended up completely changing everything.